Well, Zuma says that he'll try and convince other smaller black parties to work together ahead of the 2026 elections.
I guess Shesheni bakwethu start izwe lethu. 4 years to come. Ubani ongafuna ukuvota avotele ukuthi umuntu omnyama aphathizwe. Uyabona ke ngoba sizoba nesikhashana. So ke sikhulume nozakwethu laba abanama political parties. Sibacele nje sibe nomhlangano ophelele. Sikhuluma amaqiniso njengoba enjalo. Asikwazi ukuqhubeka kanje.
All right, well, let's get into our discussion for the day. And of course, the MK Party's one-year celebration is very much a part of the stories that really stood out for the week. But what were some of those for you? Send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584 or give us a call on 010-594-6010. Always looking forward to really getting your thoughts on some of the stories that we have, but it's been another busy week. Julius Malema has returned to his role as EFF leader for a third term without any opposition. The MK Party celebrating its first anniversary, and Johannesburg residents grappling with dry taps following Rand Water's planned infrastructure. But let's unpack these stories. We're joined by media analyst Mr. Phalane Motale, who is also former editor for City Press, Sunday Independent and Sunday Sun. He's in studio with us, of course, having been watching some of the activities of the week. And then we're also chatting with political analyst who joins us via video link, Dr Ongama Mtimka. Dr. Mtimka, good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. And in fact, perhaps I want to start with you, Dr. Mtimka, because we started off, as part of this week, you were part of these discussions talking about, all right, the SACP, the MK Party, as well as the EFF, an important week for them. But what you make of the tone of the MK Party one-year celebrations today, the former president saying, this is the party that is going to emancipate black people. Is he hitting the right notes? And do you think that this celebration was one that will continue to attract the growth that this party has had in just 1 year?
Good evening to you and your viewers. Thank you for having me, Naleti. So I think that it's an important milestone that the MK Party has marked. At the beginning of the year, we knew that it was going to have some impact, but not quite certain how big. And I think that what we saw today, the organizations that were sending messages of support, as well as the leaders that spoke, young people pointing out a program for building and consolidating, it looks like they are all indications that the MK Party are intentional about building. I heard the rhetoric of President Zuma. One thing I noted is him talking about how there was unity, not after a big fight among the white blocs in South Africa, the English and the Afrikaner, at the turn of the century in 1909 when the Union was formed, and how that unity characterized that what would be a dominant bloc in South African politics to the detriment of black people. Obviously, every piece of history President Zuma shares, it's always meant to exploit the current situation. And his view is that, I was getting the sense that he's saying, notwithstanding some of the fights that have taken place within the ANC, things should not have ended where they are, where there's fracturing. It seems that he seems intent on, forging some unity, if you like, but on his own terms. Very denialist in terms of his role in the fortunes of the ANC and his own fortunes, blaming everybody else but himself in terms of what happened to him.
Yeah, I want to bring you in here, Mr. Motale, because I think for a great part of this week, we've been watching in the run-up to these one-year celebrations, and a lot of the analysis I've heard, some of those as well coming from the links of Dr. Mtimka have been, well, it has been a big year where we've been able to see a former president come back into the political fray within just months, build a political party that was able to become the third biggest in the country in a very short period of time. As an editor who's been watching the political landscape for a long time for various media platforms, did you ever think we'd see the day where a former president, particularly Jacob Zuma, comes back into the political fray, does what he's been able to do with the party, and then be able to celebrate? I mean, you just look at the turnout, for instance, at that stadium for those celebrations. Do you sit there in awe, or your immediate sort of optics of what you see, and if you would have called this 2-3 years ago?
Thanks, Naledi. Thanks for having me. I think what's very important here is that we saw it coming, but we did not expect it to come this way. In the first instance, you'll see that both the MK and EFF are new parties, but they are from the ANC. And being from the ANC, I think they would not have existed if the ANC was delivering or making people happy. But the failure of the ANC to make people stay in that home, it's like a man who's got a family and he's not happy in his own family. And there is this lady on the outside who keeps on flirting with him. He's definitely going to get attracted to that. And I think in this particular case, it's unfortunate that both the EFF and the MK are taking advantage of the failures of the ANC, and that's what politics is all about.
Yeah, it's almost hard to, and I'll stay with you here, Mr. Motale, for this one, because it's almost hard to speak about the MK party without being able to juxtaposition the activities that are taking place with the EFF's People's Assembly, right? And as you looked at the two parties, I mean, what you make of the two comparisons, you say both parties coming out of the ANC, dissatisfied with what was going on inside of it. But when you look at it, are these two giants that will continue to see the same strength moving forward?
No, I don't think so. We should also go back a bit. You should recall the coffee Malema and the others had, EFF guys had with President Zuma at Nkandla. We still have to get the information of what was discussed, because I'm under the impression...
The tea.
Yes, the tea. So, and we know that Malema is very vocal. It's funny that he hasn't told us yet what was the tea all about. And I think that's where the whole thing started, where there should have been a measure. You remember that they blamed Mpofu about he wanted them to match, but it did not happen. I think the results, because the May 29 results surprised everyone, all parties. And I think that's where they said, but now it's not as expected. So what do we do? Everyone takes his own way. But we know that President Zuma is a good storyteller. That's why he'll always come with a history of the white people first and how we were oppressed, and now how his party will emancipate us. And people will always look to, even in a job situation, any relationship, you always look where is the grass greener, and what a coincidence that their colors are green, and especially one is in the red. You'll always try to move to the greener pastures, and I think he's taking advantage of that very well.
Sure. We'll get into the EFF, but I want to stay with the MK party and that comparison, Dr. Mtimka, because it's, again, because all of these things are happening at the same time, you almost keep switching between the two to get a sense of, who's looking most confident, who's looking the least confident. And I'm keen to hear what your observation of that is. And is it even a fair comparison to make?
Yeah, I think it is fair. These are new parties that come from the broader politics of the ANC, obviously out of different political agendas. The EFF was born as a response to President Zuma's dominance and refusal to take the cardinal pillars. The MK party was born out of the defeat of the RET faction within the ANC. I think that also of interest is the building of parties outside the ANC, backing the trend of its code outside the ANC. If you look at the two organizations from an organizational strength perspective, to me it's very clear the EFF has stabilized. Remember now, it is going through its third Congress and a second leadership succession or leadership change. The fact that it happened in an orderly way, and yes, indeed, there's a faction that's affected, but it's not, a significant organizational machinery, at least in terms of how things look. You're not likely going to see a huge exodus of members. Yes, there will be some members leaving the EFF to the MK party, but I think that generally the organizational strength of the EFF has been shown by this conference. On the other hand, when it comes to MK party, it's a new organization. It was good to see, and how we judge its organization-ness is to what extent are we seeing offshoots of leadership beyond the founder. And if we look at how proceedings happened today, you had Natin Tleko that was program coordinating, and different people that are fulfilling different roles. So we're beginning to see the emergence of an organization even within the MK party. But as I said on Thursday when we spoke, Naledi, the key test is going to be to what extent will Baba allow the organization to develop and allow it to become stronger so that over time it is the organization's will that prevails rather than his personal will. And that's something to be tested, especially in this next year of its existence.
Yeah, and I'm keen to hear from our viewers, what do you think the next year will look like for a party like the MK party? You did, of course, have the leader, former President Jacob Zuma, also taking the podium and essentially saying that he really wants MK party members to start thinking about 2026. So what do you think the party will look like a year from now as we reflect on the year that was? 072 110 5584 is our WhatsApp line. We're taking calls on 010 594 6010. I want to start looking at the EFF because that's, also a really big weekend for them. A lot of controversy, questions around where was Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, what you make of the top 6 that was elected this weekend for the EFF and Phalane Motale, and, that question around Ndlozi, what the electorate should be taking from it.
I think this would have been a good test for democracy in our political environment. But it was actually very disappointing to see that it was more, instead of an electoral conference, it was more a conference or a meeting where people just raised hands, because the media predicted every position there, who's going to take it. And so it lacked that thing. And I think that you sit with a situation that one cannot predict what is going to happen to the EFF henceforth, in the sense that Ndlozi is on the side. We don't know where he is. He's very silent. We don't know why is he kept so quiet. And as a matter of fact, for me, I think I see the EFF bleeding further, because many people who had hope about that something new will come up, I think it didn't come out stronger in any way.
Yeah, I want to actually hear from, I want to play a clip of what Malema had to say during that National People's Assembly. And this is where, of course, he's applauded members for not allowing detractors to deter the party from hosting a successful conference. This is what he had to say.
I will not congratulate you because to be tasked with the responsibility of being the vanguard of the struggle for economic freedom is not a personal achievement, but a calling that demands of you to be selfless, humble, and a servant leadership. No one has won anything here today. It is only the EFF that has won against the wishes and prayers of the doomsayers. The EFF showed the highest level of discipline and democracy, without any incidents of violence or humiliation of any individual. And our movement once again proved it is bigger than all of us. There were numerous attempts to distract us. There were countless attempts to inspire division, factionalism and disunity ahead of this National People's Assembly. And as delegates of branches of the EFF, you resisted the agents of disruption and delivered a successful conference. For this, I thank you, comrade delegates.
Malema there saying that the EFF showed the highest level of discipline, their movement proving that it is bigger than all of them, those who attack them, and those who inspire division. We're taking calls as well, 0105946010. And that really is to hear your thoughts on some of the big stories. Of course, we're looking specifically at the EFF's events, the MK party, as well as the SACP. Of course, a little bit later on, we'll talk about some other issues that were big talking points over the week. But taking your calls, Sydney's on the line in Kiani. Sydney, good evening. Thank you for calling in.
Hi, evening. How are you?
Well, what are your thoughts?
Good, thank you very much. I just want to speak about the conference, the EFF conference.
Sure. Go ahead, Sydney. We're listening.
Yes. I just want to, first of all, congratulate the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, for its Third National People's Assembly. And then I just want to congratulate them and the delegates as well, the way they behaved, the way that they were so disciplined. So it shows that the organization is growing, and the way they were even showing it on it was live. So that it really shows that the conference was displaying that free and fair, and then to all the delegates.
Yeah. Are you? So you can I assume that you are an EFF supporter, Sydney?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
And you're happy with the top six? I mean, the fact that you had Malema running, you're happy with Malema staying at the helm of the party? You don't think you would have liked to have seen a different option?
No, the way the leadership style of the commander-in-chief is so great, and we really appreciate the way he's leading us, and then we are very much happy with. And then with the people that he's going to work with, I believe, and then in his leadership style as well.
Okay. He's, of course, the top six being elected this weekend. Thank you so much for calling in, Sydney. We really appreciate it. And Dr. Mtimka, you hear there, Sydney saying the highest level of discipline, the words used by the EFF leader Julius Malema himself. But I'm keen to hear if you think that highest level of discipline was shown when there were so many questions around, well, where are the other sort of options that could have been on the table for party members?
Yeah, so Julius Malema mentioned, I think, some time ago that he is in charge in the EFF, one. And secondly, that he is a ruthless leader. So while on one level, I'm acknowledging the organizational strength of the EFF. But on another, I mean, if you look at how he's handled the Ndlozi matter, it's a really disappointing thing, in the sense that he seems to place Ndlozi in a particular position in his mind of no significance. So he has been able to maintain a tight ship of so-called high discipline, but that we don't know, for example, how many people are aggrieved by how he has treated Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. And he is a popular, very charismatic leader, and his next move is something that Julius Malema cannot treat casually. I think that if he's a good leader, he will need to, in the same way that he went and had tea with former President Jacob Zuma after campaigning for his removal. He needs to manage the issue with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. He's got gravitas. If he were to go to the MK party, he will pull a lot of people with him. Likewise, if he were to go to any other parties. So I don't think that Julius Malema's triumphalism is going to help him in the long run. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is more popular, for example, than any of the leaders that are there in that top structure of the EFF, and he would be failing to capitalize on a brand that he has helped develop himself as Julius Malema if he simply allowed him to fizzle out into insignificance.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, because a lot of the questions have been what sort of relationships can be garnered between some of the parties. And you of course, make the point there, Dr. Mtimka, that to some extent Malema would have had a role to play in even, I suppose, the development and the growth, to some extent, of the MK party. But this is what Malema had to say, though, during this National People's Assembly around, you know, how he views the MK party, and certainly how the EFF has no interest in working with the MK party. Listen to this.
Our people gave all the progressive black parties majority to govern in South Africa. The ANC decided to go with right-wingers, racist, white supremacists. It will come back to its senses. When it comes back to its senses, it's gone. If they are going to call those criminals of Mkondo and work with them, it's their own problem. Tinasiangena will do our own thing. We want nothing to do with Mkondo. It's their own. If they want them, it's them. You can't choose friends for them. If they, or anyway, they were friends together, criminals. We are not going into a coalition with the ANC on condition there is MKI. We are not interested in it. It's not a condition. We are ready to govern. We are ready to give the people of South Africa a desired government that will look after black people.
Yeah, there you have it. Julius Malema, leader of the MK party, who says we want nothing to do with Mkondo, and saying that we will do our own thing. Taking your call, 0105946010. Moremedi is calling in from Pretoria. Moremedi, good evening. Thank you for calling us. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, good evening. I want to greet the leaders also there. My sister, I want to say, first of all, I want to say we are not yet there at Kanana. We strive, we fought for democracy. But what I want to say, starting by President Ramaphosa, we are not yet there at Kanana for him to keep on talking about Africa. Every time he's talking about Africa. Then when I go to Comrade Malema, it's good that Comrade Malema has won. I congratulate him. But we cannot open borders now. I see he doesn't compromise. We are not yet like Botswana, at least, where we can say now we have settled in our democracy. We can see what we can do. We can open other people to come and maybe assist there and there. We are not yet there. We are still struggling. Going to Comrade MK, Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma got lots of stories behind him. He doesn't qualify to be a president. I don't know why they are using him to campaign for MK, unless somebody else. They also are having a good mandate for the committee, but not Jacob Zuma. He cannot keep on criticizing and blaming people at ANC. They did that and that and that to him. He was the president, but there were lots of Gupta people who were in our country. They did lots of mess. So he was supposed to be disciplined. Then he went out there and opened a party. We are afraid if he can be a president, those Guptas will come again. Then he will still want to deploy them, and they will take a lead of the country. We are not yet there at our Kanana. Foreign nationals, too much for foreign nationals here. There's lots of things to be addressed. Please, we are not yet there at Kanana.
Okay.
We need our leaders to listen to the community.
I immediately think of the song, Not Yet Uhuru. Thank you so much for calling in, Moremedi in Pretoria. We appreciate the calls. Do you agree with the points that have been made that, from a policy point of view, this policy that have been spoken by some of these parties, particularly those of opening up the borders, for instance, by the EFF, are just too early? But I think that I also really want to speak to the point that was made by Julius Malema and the clip that was made before this, Dr Motale, about the relationship between the two parties, that a marriage is never going to happen. And I make this point because, again, last year, the year before, if you had said to many South Africans that you'd see a holding of hands between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance, people would have said that's not possible. Yet here we are.
Yeah. Besides just the confusion we are having between the other parties and their relationships, I think what is most confusing about the EFF and Julius is that you never know who is it Julius speaking or is it the EFF speaking? So when you don't know what is what, because in some instances you'll find that Julius is talking and making statements and policies which are not in their constitution. And for people to know, we also know that Julius tends like the Cape Town weather. He says this now, and then later we know that the university head with Jacob Zuma. And then the next thing was Ubaba, and then he was praising Zuma. And all of a sudden, in a week or so back, he was calling Zuma by all other names. And I think what is very confusing, not only for people observing, but also for voters, because at the moment, we know all, if not most parties, are having no stable ground. So people are moving, hopping and jumping around. And one of the problems is that if you are not with the ANC, for example, will you go to the EFF or will you go to MK? Or will rather, there are people who, the clever blacks, will say, where do I go? Should I go to the DA? And we all know that if it was not for the ANC's failures and the recent marriage or engagement they had with the DA, then we just start to see that the ground becomes more unstable in the sense that during 2020, during the next local elections, where are the people going to vote? We know the EFF has been around for some time, but they don't control any municipality. And instead of growing and growing, all of a sudden, with the last elections, we've seen them losing ground. And that's very worrying. That's very worrying because, as a matter of fact, we also know that after this conference this weekend, we are now only now going to see when Ndlozi comes out, then what's going to happen? Is the
what do you think was going to happen there when he does come out? When we see Ndlozi again?
He's very smart. That's why he didn't respond. He just waited and everything. Malema even went to say that he thinks that he's bigger than the organization. And we didn't hear him saying that he thinks he's bigger than. We knew that they said he could be moving, but then they kept him silent. I don't know how. And now we're all waiting to say what's the next move he's going to make. But big things are coming.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take one more caller. We've got Sizwe Mahlangu from Pretoria on the line. Sizwe, good evening. Thank you for calling. What would you like to contribute?
Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm well, sir. Thank you for calling in. Tell us your thoughts.
Yes, man. You see, the problem is one, I think, with the EFF, man. At the time when it was established, I personally was supporting EFF because I thought that it will definitely change the perspective of the political perspective of this country. But then now, as time goes on, I could realize that then now this young man, I'm sorry to say this young man is busy selling this country to people from outside. You know why I am saying this, man? We cannot have a leader in this country who has been saying, if you can remember, who has been saying that these people, if they cannot be able to access this country, they must come up with a creative or means to come to this particular country. Then after he has raised that, then we happen to have people who are raped at the mining and so forth. Then two, it cannot be that this man, he had a conference that took 3 days, but a person has never spoke even a single word about poisoners that which our children have received from these spaza shops and all of that. And if you can listen to him very much careful, whatever problems that which we are having with regard to these people who are from outside the countries committing crimes, all these other things that are incorrect, you would never hear him saying anything. And I'm very much worried that the journalists are even scared of him. They don't even ask him any questions of and whatsoever. So that is my problem with this guy. I think, according to me, the EFF is being supported by these people from the foreign countries, because it cannot be that the country is so under siege by these people from outside the countries, then it's not saying anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for calling in, Sizwe. Sizwe Mahlangu sharing his thoughts from Pretoria. I want to actually start to move towards other themes, because Mr. Motale earlier talked about what happens when people are frustrated within the ANC. They want to leave. Their options may be MK Party, EFF, and I thought to myself, well, they very well might have the SACP as an option now, Dr. Mtimka. And I don't know if what you see, particularly if you look at the events of this weekend with the MK Party and the EFF, and then you compare them to the SACP, if you have a big of a force that's also entering the fray here, could sew some of the parties together where the 2026 elections are concerned, or simply just won't perhaps even gather the sort of numbers that give it any really sort of bargaining power in 2026?
Yeah, so the SACP has made this resolution since, some would argue, 2002 conference, but I can trace it to the 2007 conference. And in each of the conferences, 2007, 2012, 2017, they hedged their bets on what was going to happen with the ANC conference. In so doing, they allowed themselves that whatever attitudes they could leverage at the time are no longer there. The ANC, for example, was perceived as this party that is too center right, even one could argue. And at the time, in the mid-2000s, they could provide a left-leaning alternative. At the time, there was no EFF, there was no MK Party. They are coming into the scene at a time when that space left of the ANC is already already has two main parties, number 2 and number 3, number 3 and number 4 in electoral politics. And then also what you have is that the NUMSA has attempted the idea of a workers' party 2 times and they've failed. In 2016, it was through the United Front. In 2019, it was through the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party. So I don't think that the SACP leaders are not aware of this. I think they are. But what they are taking as a lesson from the GNU process is that you pay a heavy price if you don't have tangible support, or if your support cannot translate to a balance of forces shifting support in terms of seats, or what one may call bums on seats in a municipal council or in government. Now, this is what they are trying to do. They are taking a high-risk path that says, let us go and contest so that when we come back and we negotiate in the alliance, we will have a tangible support base. At the moment, it's always been associated, with the tripartite alliance. It represents the left, but you don't know what is a tangible, aspect of that support base currently, because it's not translated to seats in municipal councils or legislatures.
Mr. Motale, your final thoughts there. The SACP, did we see a contender enter the political fray this week?
Not at all. We already know, Naledi, that the tripartite alliance is dead. Being dead, we also know that the SACP in the previous years, they had ministers in the ANC cabinet, and now they only have one, whilst the DA in the GNU, they have about 7. And so the biggest problem is that where will they get people? I mean, they've tried, the doctor have already said that they've tried union, they've tried any other thing, they've also participated in some municipal elections as the SACP, but now there's still no chance.
Not a contender. Okay, that's the view of our guests this evening, and we really appreciate some of these contributions. Ongoing discussions, of course. Mr. Phalane Motale, media analyst and former editor for many publications, the City Press, Sunday Independent, as well as the Sunday Sun, and Dr. Ongama Mtimka joining us via video link, a political analyst.